Hello and welcome to Bringing Education Home. I'm Herb.
And I'm Christina. And together we bring you experts and ideas to help grow healthy, happy, successful families that are both inside
and outside the box. If you like the show, be sure to follow Christina on Facebook.
And please leave us a like review on your favorite podcast platform.
Today I have the pleasure of introducing Dinalynn Rosenbush. Dinalynn is a consultant and parenting coach, speaker, 30-year public school speech language pathologist, international best-selling author, and creator-host of the Top 2% podcast, The Language of Play. Dinalynn helps parents understand how children communicate so they can connect more deeply with their children. She empowers parents with practical daily strategies for building speech and language skills during normal daily activities. Welcome, Dinalynn. It is a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I am honored to be on Bringing Education Home. I'm so glad.
It is so awesome having you because we love having heartfelt experts, just like we were getting to know you and knowing that you are here to help families, right? We are trying to really make sure that they have the tips, the tricks, the things that they need to know to really develop their child into the happy, healthy, successful child that we know they can be. So go ahead and tell us a little bit at the beginning about why this passion, what took you into speech pathology, what took you into teaching.
All right. I'm so glad to share that. And I want to say that it was a journey that wasn't expected at first. Mm-hmm. And I just was interested in the topic, and I started taking so many classes that the professor said, why don't you make this your major? And so I did. It was just truly, that's how it started. I went into the school to help children, of course. Mm-hmm. That's what we want to do. We go because we want to educate kids. Over time, our caseloads became very large. And so I needed to change the service delivery model. And fortunately, I worked in a school system where the administration was super supportive. Mm-hmm. And I was only asked, is it good for kids? I said, yes. And so he said, go ahead. And that was quite literally it. So I was given a lot of freedom to do what my gut said was really good for kids. I started inviting parents to come into my classroom with me once a week to work with me with their kids. So they would see exactly hands-on, what is it that you do when you have a child that isn't listening, that has a speech sound problem, that is stuttering, that is working on vocabulary, sentence structure, whatever it is that they were not getting right. So then the parents would learn what to do. They would go home and practice and then come back the next week. And in that experience of the parents that were willing and able, I saw enormous leaps and bounds. And that makes total sense to me because the way the brain works is we want frequent short exposures, don't we? And they come into our classrooms, which is great. We get them where they need to go, but it takes longer. But when I can send it home with a willing and active parent, they can do 5 to 10 second practices all evening, all morning. And I teach parents how to, let's do certain things at bath time. Let's set up certain things at dinner time so that you are incorporating your speech and language development and practices at the times you're doing those activities anyway. So you're not just taking another worksheet to the table, but rather you're incorporating communication where communication happens. In my practice in the school, though it works, we do have the situation where a child is disabled with their communication. They come sit with me in an isolated experience with some other kids, and then they need to go out into the rest of their world, their home, their bus, the classrooms, and try to incorporate their learning in a disabled area by themselves with other people. And that is a very difficult model for the kids. And so part of my change in service delivery model was to go into classrooms and run a lesson for the teachers in their classrooms so they could see how to differentiate a little bit differently for the kiddos that have an impairment in communication. And the teachers were fabulous. The teachers have a beautiful heart for wanting those kiddos to grow, and they would do those things. And so that was really this big foundation that caused me then to say, okay, now I want to start a business that really focuses on parents. How can I do this business to give the parents the parts that I really liked in the school system setting? Because I loved working with parents, loved working with kids. I didn't like the paperwork. I didn't like sitting inside all the time. There were parts of the job that I didn't like, but I always loved working with kids and parents. So I developed a business where I get to work with kids and parents, and I can teach the parents how they can do a lot of this at home. Now, this doesn't mean that if your child gets speech and language therapy in the schools, keep doing it. They need it. And working with me is not something that would be in opposition in any way, because we would be working together to build forward and give the parents insights in what they can do at home.
I absolutely love that. And, some of the things that you said, first of all, that you had supportive administration and the wonderful teachers that, I taught with for so many years as well. We always were looking for how can we help our children, right? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, like you said, things have happened. Things are crazy out there right now. And some schools are having more difficulty doing that kind of stuff. But like you said, whenever you brought the parents in to see the lesson and then how they could take that home, I found that same silver lining during COVID. Whenever I would be online teaching and I would see the parents watching, right? How is she doing that? And then those parents who really jumped in really made a difference for their children. And that is one of the things that I absolutely love about those parents who want to be empowered in their child's education, be involved in their child's education, and really make sure that's moving forward.
Yeah, that's what your podcast is all about, is for the parents who do want to take the education home and who do want to do it themselves. Mm-hmm. And I love that parents want to do that. And that's the parents that I serve too. I did notice that during COVID, we had, prior to COVID, 10% of the student population, roughly, needed speech and language therapy at some point in time up to the age of 10. It was just under 30%. Just under 10%. And when the pandemic happened, then right after that, we had 30% of our kids qualified. So that's a huge jump in communication struggles. So not all parents are like the parents that are listening to this podcast. So for those people that are really integrated and they want to bring education home, what you're doing is giving them the tools and actions that they need. Yeah. I think that is really, really good.
Thank you. And, one of the biggest hopes of this podcast and, many other podcasts is that they would share it with other people who might need the information, right? So hopefully, audience, as you're listening, if you know a family who's like, their kiddo speaks a little bit differently, and I wonder if they know that they might need some intervention or help with that, right? So share this podcast, share the information that you get. And so that was going to be my next question. What is like one or two things that are key indicators that a family really maybe needs to have their child's speech checked, or that they really helps them notice that something's kind of off and they might need to, get it checked out?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question because it's blurry for a lot of families. Mm-hmm. The first and most obvious one is, are there speech sounds that are messy and you're not really understanding, but you're kind of understanding? Mm-hmm. And then there are developmental charts you can look at. But I'm going to say that even if your child fits those charts for speech, you can always help them more. Leaving something to develop at its own rate, in its own time, in its own way, isn't always the best way to do it. Because if you give them, kind of like, let's say your child is stirring something in the bowl in the kitchen, and they flick the spoon because their motor skills aren't that great. And we need to remind them, keep the bottom down in the bowl. It's a motor skill to be able to do that. You go hand over hand and you help them with that motor skill. Speech is also a motor skill. You are using the muscles in the mouth. So we can learn how to tell our children in very positive, affirming ways, make the sound this way. And whether or not they are on the chart or off the chart. So I'll say that about speech because that seems to be the thing that parents notice first and the most. The second thing parents talk to me about is, my child isn't listening. Mm-hmm. The reason children don't listen, of course, we sometimes have deliberate disobedience. Of course, that's there. But when we are talking about a child that has a speech and language delay, we need to consider how well they're processing auditory information. If they have a speech sound error, like we just talked about, we know they're not processing auditory information fully and correctly. The other thing you can do is ask your child to repeat the direction. If they can't, they did not process that auditory information correctly. Yep. If they look at you and smile and do the opposite thing, that's not willful disobedience. Something was missing. Right? So if we can learn how to read our children's behavior as their communication, it gives us a window into knowing, what did they miss? Or what can I fill in the gap on? So those are two things, but there's lots of other things. Let's say your child is speaking and they're past tense is always wrong.
Mhm.
Or they say her do it instead of she did it or she does it. Like they're getting the pronouns wrong. Let's say they aren't able to use plurals correctly. Any of those little indicators, you can be pretty sure that when they listen, they aren't catching everything. If you see any of those indicators, because they haven't developed maybe their understanding of language yet, or maybe they're a little behind in their development, whether they are behind or not, we know that it's not quite developed. So it does not mean that when they don't listen, that they were willfully disobedient.
Now a few words about vibrant family education.
How many entrepreneurs and business owners start out on this journey to make a better life for their family, only to find that it took so much more time and effort than they were expecting that they had even less time for their family? I know I did.
At Vibrant Family Education, we want to help you reach your family goals while you're still building towards your business goals. We do this by bringing you the third leg of the stool to keep your family upright, family education development.
By bringing your children's education home, you will be able to model your work ethic and family values as you overcome obstacles and challenges to build your business. Instead of learning facts to pass tests, your children can be watching and seeing the dedication it takes to build your business and the legacy you want to create for their future. They will be able to witness the struggles and joys, the wins and the losses, and learn from you how to persevere and grow in life.
Instead of waiting until you get successful to spend more time with your family, start with the end goal in mind and bring your family home. Instead of trying to repair your family after you reach success, let us help you start achieving your family goals from the outset. Learn to be successful with your family now, and no matter what happens in the future, they will be better prepared for life, especially after watching how you cared for and built not only a business, but a healthy, happy, and successful family.
We offer a wide range of educational services, including how to easily get started with homeschooling. Come visit us at vibrantfamilyeducation.com and let us show you how. And now, back to our guest.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that because, as new parents, lots of times, they weren't given an owner's manual, and we talk about this a lot, but then parents are like, oh, well, a 2, a 3, a 5-year-old can do like 4 things at a time. And it's like, that's not developmentally appropriate. At that age, a 1-step direction, then graduating to a 2-step to a 3-step direction is appropriate as they get older. So that's another part of that. It's not disobedience. They can't process all of those steps lots of times if they're a really young age.
Right. That's a great one for an example, because parents will ask me, like, how come they can do this 4 steps to get their shoes on and coat on and go outside and get buckled in the car, but when I tell them to do whatever else, they're not able to. And what I'll say is, how much of that has been memory, even muscle memory? Because let's say every single time that you brush teeth, you're doing the brushing for the child. And then eventually you just say, you do it yourself. But never along the way was there the motor skill of unscrewing the cap. And how hard do you squeeze the toothpaste tube? And do you rinse the spit down the sink? There are things that are not part of the communication when we pass off an instruction to them that we need to remember there's a lot more steps. And so if you say to your child, brush your teeth and get in the car, but they only have maybe just the brushing part that they've been doing, but they don't know to put it away or whatever. We can set our kids up for the actual things that we're judging them as doing wrong, but not really realizing that we actually set them up for it. And to explain, like this 4-step thing, we're shifting attention. It's not necessarily a 4-step or do 4 things at a time. It's shifting attention at any given moment. So if your child is watching TV and playing Legos and tying their shoes, whatever, like doing all these different things, sucking their thumb, their attention shifts between the things that they're doing. And so when we give them tasks, we learn how to group a task into a cluster of tasks. So you have a sequence of tasks. Then eventually you call that one sequence, brush your teeth. But the sequence is the memory and learning work that kiddos with speech and language delays sometimes need to have spelled out in pictures. Sometimes if they're a little bit older and they can use writing, you can write out the tasks. And then eventually that becomes memory. And then when it's memory, you take down all those visual supports. But
Yeah.
if you don't have the visual support, you need to do a lot of reminding.
Mhm.
But if they're not understanding auditory information, your reminding is going out into the wind. And
Right.
it's going to be a lot more work for you. So those visual supports are tremendously helpful as parents to just say, oh, I see that you're missing the third in the sequence. Let's practice this one.
Yeah, so a really big one there that I see that a lot of parents have problems with, my parents did, was the whole clean your room. So clean your room is a one thing, but there are so many steps, so many different parts that they would say clean your room, and I would go in and it's like, well, it looks clean to me. What are you talking about? So it wasn't
Right.
put the books away, make the bed, do this, do that. It was like, my room is how I like it. It's clean for me. It doesn't look dirty. It might be messy. So that's kind of that's a big step right there. That's like clean your room is not a one step
Right.
command.
Exactly. And learning how to take a task that you want your child to do and to break it down so that it's doable is really a skill. It's not a fault of parenting. It's not a bad parenting thing. It's not a bad person thing. To be able to break down a task like clean your room, like you just said, is something that as a parent, when we learn how to do that, we break it down into make your bed. Then we break down make your bed into, oh, there's the flat sheet. Oh, wait, there's the fitted sheet, then the flat sheet. And then I've got a blanket and then a comforter. Oh, wait, the pillow's on the floor. Oh, wait, the stuffed animals, where do they go? Oh, and then there's the special blanket and the lovey. Like making the bed can be broken down too, can it? So each of the steps, and we forget that our kids really need to learn all the steps. And when we take it down to the little pieces and put it back together, then your parent will be able to go into the room and say, you did a great job on making your bed. Now I want you to pick up every book. And you go in and 70% of the books are picked up. Great, you picked up books. Good job. Now, can we find any more? I spy. Can we turn it into something playful where we are looking for where did they do it right? And where can we expand on where they do it right? Because if we jump to their willful disobedience or they don't care and they're resisting us, which I'm not saying doesn't happen, because it does, but if we jump to that, we set them up to do that.
Yeah.
And one other thing that I would like to say is if they get it right once, it doesn't mean they've learned it. It means they got it right once.
They need
It
more
takes
practice.
more practice. Because it's like even in sports practice, if you run a play right and you get it right once and it's like, that's awesome, but then you get it wrong a bunch of times and then you get it right again, and then you get it wrong a bunch of times and then you get it right again. So it's a building process. So once they get it right once, don't expect, oh, you got it, you're good, and now when I tell you I expect it all to be right. It still takes touches, it still takes practice, it still takes learning to keep continually doing it correctly.
Exactly. And in my practice, we look at 80% accuracy, and that's when we call it mastery. Mm-hmm. So when I am working with a child, and let's say I work with a child twice a week, and once is with the parents and once is me, the stuff that they're 80% at, that's what I train the parents to do. And they take that home. And, the kids that are in my program are going to be needing more than one thing, right? And so then I'll take the hardest things and we will work on those to get the harder for the child things up closer to mastery. And then a piece of it will be right, and the piece of it I'll send home so that it's practice on what they do know. And then we work on mastering at 80%. We never go beyond that, really, because this practice and experience is the other piece of it, isn't it? Because I would say that for you, Christina and Herb, if you were to say, how mastered are you at making your bed? I think that you probably have 80% mastery, and yet you know how to make your bed, and that is fine. Maybe you're 100%, but few people are 100% on anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not that tidy.
and yet it doesn't mean you're a bad human. It doesn't mean you're sloppy. It doesn't mean you're dirty. It doesn't mean you're messy. It means that, okay, so sometimes you're not making your bed.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you are making it, you're not making it as straight as you know how. Because you've got other things on your mind. Our kids do too. Mm-hmm. You've got other desires for the time. Your kids do too. You care more some days. Your kids do too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when I work with kids a lot, especially those kiddos that I know have a speech issue, they're having a hard time creating the sounds and stuff. Lots of times I like to slow them down and show them how my mouth is working so that they can maybe try to figure it out where it is happening in their mouth as well. Is that one of the things that you kind of show parents or help parents do with their kiddos so they can kind of help the kiddos when they need help?
It depends on the sound, but yes.
Yeah.
The sounds that are at the front where you can see are the ones that I do that with. You've got F, B, M, P, you've got a lot of different things right in the front. But when you've got sounds in the back, like K and G and maybe R, those are not sounds that you can just say, do it this way, and they can watch. So that is more by touch, by listening and learning.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's a lot of strategies for every sound. And that is one that works very, very well. What you're saying, that works really well for our kiddos that can watch and copy.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. This has been so much fun and such a great conversation. And thank you for the tips and tricks that you have dropped to our audience. This has been a thing that you really want to kind of listen in, especially if you're a newer parent, if you're a younger parent, you're an only child. That's one of the things that I had noticed a lot is that if there was an only child, lots of times because they were so used to their speech, they didn't really realize there was a problem. And then when there was a second child or a cousin or something that came over a lot, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a second, something's here, right? But we are on a little bit of a different time frame today. We would love to have Dinalynn come and talk with us on a longer, expanded show later. But today we are on Potapalooza, a great show that helps us get to know other guests and get to them introduced to our audience. Sorry about that. So Dinalynn, as we wrap up, because we are out of time, would you please make sure that you share information on how parents can get to you and understand how to get a hold of you if they need some help?
I would love to. Thank you. So my podcast is thelanguageofplay.com. No, that's the website. The website that isn't published. The podcast is The Language of Play. And that would be the best place at this point to find me. My email is hello@thelanguageofplay.com. And my website will be published. I've been busy with clients and doing other things, and I just haven't gotten to that website yet. So I have a link tree, and would you be able to have that in your show notes?
Absolutely. We'll get and put it down in the show notes.
Perfect, because that is where the most recent things will be. So sometimes I offer webinars and other activities as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dinalynn, for being here today, for sharing us your wisdom and your information around speech and helping our families understand a little bit more about how to help their children. It has been a great show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Really enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to having you back so we can talk about more things.
That will be my honor and my delight. Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right, audience, that's it for right now. Make sure that you take those gold nuggets and put them in your pocket, take them with you, then take them out and use them when it's the right time, okay? Make sure that you're tuning in every week. Friday morning is when we release our shows, and check us out at bringingeducationhome.com. And make sure you leave us a like and a review. We need some of those out there too. All right, audience, thanks for everything. Talk to you later. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Hello and welcome to Bringing Education Home. I'm Herb.
And I'm Christina. And together we bring you experts